So to start off this morning with our psalm,
Holds up the other one.
Ran into Chris.
so we're in Psalm 9 and it's a psalm of thanksgiving. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will tell of all your marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing to your name, O Most High. So if we could, the book suggests that today, trying to really be conscious throughout the day of all of our blessings. And to take a second to thank God for that particular blessing as you go through the day. So is there a blessing right now that you would want to share?
Tiger boy.
Tiger boy. Yeah, cat tiger boy.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta see his adventures on Facebook. So, yeah.
Okay, this one's weird. But several of us are included in this, but I'm thankful that there are so many people in this church who are willing to give of their time to serve on the board and in other positions that, so that you don't have three people doing everything, which is kind of how I think it started back in the 60s.
Yeah. Well, an example is at the last minute putting together a meal for the men's shelter last night.
Yeah.
A very nice meal. And that there were several people involved in that. Any other blessings?
The Lord's blessed me with many good friends. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Being someone now who lives alone, and it's, every day, thank God for the many friends.
Where do they make a difference?
That really good.
Yeah, for those of us who are single and don't have kids.
Right.
And little to no family in your life.
Yeah.
It makes a world of difference. So yeah, I'm thankful too. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
I'm always grateful every day for the amazing creation in which we live. Every blade of grass, every tree, every starry night is amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to add one more, which is kind of funny, but little silly things to me just brighten my day. Lynn Sarvis just stopped me in the fellowship hall to say, hey, Big Lots has a lot of Peeps on sale.
Thank God for Peeps.
And she described a variety I don't.
But that's hard to find for you.
You had hot tamale.
No, I've passed on hot tamale.
If you go to, have you ever been to Cracker Barrel?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They have more varieties of Peeps
Oh.
at Easter time than any place I've ever found.
Oh, my gosh.
That happens to be a thing because I was trying to get some Oreos to put in Susan's Christmas sock. And I stood at this wall of Oreos that was everything but plain old Oreo. You name the flavor and they've got it.
Peanut butter, coconut,
Yeah, it is.
double
It's even
stuff.
more extravagant.
Couldn't find the plain old.
Yep, it's even more extravagant, especially at Walmart, are the flavors of Cheerios. Sometimes
wow.
out the flavors of Cheerios at Walmart, it'll be a
That reminds me of the M&Ms at the M&M store in New York City.
Yeah.
Oh my word, maybe must do 30 different things. I had no idea.
It's just like nature, Nancy.
So bring
Every flavor has a Oreo.
Every type of M&M, yeah.
Revolution.
something more important.
Yeah.
When we well, when we sponsored our second refugee family, I guess, I think it's Harnesses, took them to the grocery store and they walked about 10 feet in and went,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they couldn't move,
Yeah.
so we have all this nonsense, like we need 100 kinds of Oreos and they're just thankful to get food.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Satina and the boys had a similar experience when I took them to Walmart the first time. And one of the things they really marveled at,
Dog food.
dog food. Yeah. was the
Oh,
dog food.
really?
Yeah, well, plus in Islam, dogs are considered unclean
Right,
animals, so you would never see dog food
right.
in a store, but then to see a whole aisle of dog food.
But I had the same experience on the one aisle, both sides, from floor to ceiling, the entire length of the aisle in France.
And I had the same experience at a little grocery store in Youngstown, Ohio, with the olive oil aisle. It was like a Piggly Wiggly or, that kind of store. Yeah, no, a whole aisle, olive oil.
But both sides?
So that's olive oil.
But it was still
Yeah.
overwhelming to see that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyhow,
Olive oil's the transition back into the.
yes,
Yeah.
the Middle East and
Yes.
Asia Minor.
All right, there we go.
All right, here we go. All right, so we are at 2nd John and 3rd John. And that what we're doing this fall or this year, because now it's winter, is looking at what are called the Catholic letters, Catholic meaning universal. And so 2nd John and 3rd John are actual letters. Several of these little bitty books are not really letters, but these two actually are. So Sarah, would you or Susan there on the map on the bulletin board, and everybody grab a Bible. Would you find Ephesus in Asia? And then in Asia, oh yeah, there it is.
It's right there.
Okay, right there.
Okay.
Okay, so there is, we don't know exactly who these letters were written to. 2nd John doesn't specify anybody, 3rd John does specify somebody. But Craddock and Boring think that it was a church or churches in the Ephesus area. So Sarah, if you could point on the map so the folks on Zoom can see, they'll be able to see.
They're not
your
gonna be able
finger.
to see.
Yeah,
Oh, there's
a little bit
Cassie.
off camera. Hey, good morning, Cassie.
Morning.
All right, so see, Sarah is pointing there, sort of like in what's now
On the
Western-
Aegean,
modern day Turkey, Western modern day
just
Turkey.
opposite of Athens, across the Aegean.
Yeah, here's
Yeah.
Athens, here's Ephesus.
Okay, so that's basically where they think these letters were written to, and whether they were written to us, especially 2nd John, a specific church or a little group of churches, area. We don't know, but there's speculation that maybe they were. And 3rd John was addressed to a guy named Gaius or Gaius, Gaius, and we'll get to that. Because hopefully we're gonna get to both of them today, get through both of them. These,
I'm sorry.
that,
Both pages.
Yeah, they're only 13 verses each.
right, and 3rd John is the shortest book in the New Testament.
Even shorter than Jude.
Yeah,
Oh,
clearly
Jude,
so,
okay.
that's what, I didn't count the words, but, in Greek, 2nd John is so short, in Greek, it's 245 words in the Greek. All right, which translate into English and the number count, and what translation you use and all that will be different, but in the Greek, it's 245. All right, so these two books, along with 1st John, and then the Gospel of John, all right, and to some extent even Revelation, which was written by a different John, all right, they all have these similar themes. Okay, the Johannine literature, woohoo, here we go, have similar themes, all right, of truth, love, and abiding in truth and love. Okay, so are those core principles of Christianity. As well as Jesus Christ, the flesh, the existence of Jesus in the flesh, right? And that is gonna come up in both of these letters. Okay. So those are pretty standard themes. They do think that 2nd John and 3rd John are written by the same person, based on the vocabulary that is used and the writing style and all that. They do think the same when you wrote both of these. They, both books start in a similar fashion as Paul's letters. All right, with the greeting. All right, and then ending with, gee, I hope to see you soon.
Which is kind of how we end our letters today.
Yeah. So we'll hear that similarity as well. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about 2 John before we read it, so that as we read it, we'll kind of know what they mean with some of a couple of terms in here. First of all, both of these letters start from the elder. And I assume everybody's translation says that. From
That's
the elder.
elder.
The
From,
elder.
from
The
the,
elder.
from the elder, yep. Was the capitalized?
Mhm.
Well, it's
Okay.
the first,
Yeah.
well,
It-
this
it
is the
starts
first
out
part of
the
the sentence.
elder.
Oh, it says the
Not-
elder, it doesn't say from?
No,
Oh,
the
mine
elder
says
to the
from.
elect lady.
Here's my-
It just says the elder to the elect lady.
Okay,
Oh,
to
okay.
the elder
Yours-
to the
Yours
elect.
says
Yeah.
from the elder and mine says the elder.
Yeah, and mine says from also. Okay, so the elder, all right, doesn't mean an old person. When I think we probably, this is not a surprise to anybody, it means a person of a leadership role within the church. Which is kind of what elder means. As a kid in the congregation that I grew up in, the elders were all old.
Yeah, me
So-
too, me too.
Well, I started out one way and now I'm ending up another.
So elder here does not necessarily mean, so I, grew up elder meaning old and leader.
Did that come from, was there an elder in Jewish faith?
I think there
Wonder-
was. If Harold, if you're there, I don't know if you're there. I think there were elders among the Israelites and the Jews. I don't think that was an unknown concept.
Well, I think that's a global concept in every culture. There have been elders and they have been people who've lived a while and have some experience and are looked to for advice.
Uh-huh, yeah,
I think you're right.
yeah, I think so too.
And there are elders in every tribe I can think of.
Yeah, or there may be different terms, but it's a word that seems to have that meaning, so. Okay, and then the letter is addressed to, my Bible says, my greetings to the lady,
Mhm.
the chosen one, and her children, and to her children. Anybody else to say anything really
To the
different?
lady chosen by God and to her children.
Yeah, that's
Mine
not
says
bad.
elect lady.
Well, mine,
Okay, you're
mine has an
interested.
introduction above it and it says, probably meaning a local church and its members.
Uh-huh, right,
Yeah.
yes. All right, to sort of go back to the imagery of the church as the bride of Christ. Okay, and that's a metaphor that is used in 2 Corinthians and several times in the book of Revelation. So, so apparently it's written to a particular church and maybe some other churches that can
So
go to that
to the
church.
church and its children.
Yep. So, and it's thought that these letters were also written toward the end of that first century, so around in the 90s AD. All right, and one other thing, the commentators noted that both of these letters, being, they're about one page in our Bibles, but it also was one page on a standard size of papyrus at the time.
Okay.
That they would have fit on the standard size of
Paper was
papyrus.
probably expensive.
Yeah, well, they just had papyrus. They didn't have paper then. So. Okay, so if somebody would finish reading that opening verses 1 through 3.
So I'm thinking in terms of scrolls,
Yeah,
long.
I don't know what, I guess,
Well, I wonder
Well-
if that's a translation into English that we would use, we would be more familiar with pages than the word scrolls.
I don't want to get sidetracked.
Oh, no, they're just speculating that it would fit. There's nothing in the
okay.
scripture that says it fit on one standard sheet.
That's-
They, you know, they,
Double space.
the
triple
archaeologists,
space.
historians, whatever, knew that there was a relatively standard size of
Okay,
papyrus.
got it, okay,
And so that these would have fit on one sheet of
Yeah.
that papyrus.
okay.
So, have y'all ever seen papyrus sheets?
I've
I've
seen
got some
scrolls.
paintings at
I
home
know.
that were from Egypt done on papyrus. And it's,
Like rice paper.
yeah, yeah, I mean, there, you definitely see the fibers of the papyrus in it. So it's like a real coarse rice paper. And it's stiff. I guess you can fold it. I'll have to find those and bring them in, because that's what, that and sheepskin, I guess, we know the Israelites used, yeah, sheep or goat skins. So, but that, and it's, what I have is real stiff, you know, pretty stiff, I don't. And so and the edges are rough.
Yeah.
You know, they're not cut, not like cut paper, so. All right, so anyhow, okay, so if somebody would read verses 1 through 3,
I'll do that.
okay.
The elder to the lady chosen by God and her children, whom I love in truth, and not I alone, but all who know the truth, for the sake of the truth that dwells among us and will be with us forever. Grace, mercy, and peace shall be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father, in truth and love.
So how many times do y'all see the word truth?
What?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6? Wow, in verses 1 through 3, cool. Yep,
I only
All
have
right.
4.
4, yep, so it depends on the translation.
I think I only have one.
Wow.
So how does, read yours then, Bud?
From the elder to the dear lady and to her children, whom I truly love, and I am not the only one, but all who know the truth love you, because only the truth remains in us and will be with us forever. May God the Father and Jesus Christ, the Father, Son, and give us grace, mercy, peace, and may they be in ours in truth and love. So there were 3.
Okay, all right, so get into that truth. All right, so thinking back to, you know, the issues that, because as we did 1st and 2nd Peter, as we did 1st John, right? And so we're getting a picture of the early church and what the early church was dealing with. So that piece of truth, all right, emphasizing the truth is a key piece in the church. Remember, we talked about in 1st John, there was a lot about the Antichrist, all right? And there would be the, you know, they alternate between the admonitions and the exhortations, you know, the good things and the bad things, the good things and the bad things, love and the Antichrist, love and the Antichrist, the truth and the Antichrist. And apparently there were, and we'll get more into this in these 2 letters. You know, the church was pretty dependent on these itinerant preachers. You know, these people that would go from one church to another to spread the news, to, you know, share the word. And we can imagine the number of different messages people were giving. And apparently there was a lot of messages about whether or not Jesus really was in the flesh. All right, so whether or not that really happened. Now we're far enough out now that the eyewitnesses to Jesus are pretty much dead. You know, so, you know, we know what it's like nowadays with social media and the internet. People can put all kinds of stuff out there, and in 15 minutes, you've got a big following. You know, so in those days, it took a few years, but you know, that kind of debate and this whatever, you know, the teachings that questioning whether Jesus really lived apparently was a real issue in those times in that place. So,
That's surprising to me.
yeah,
No, there were people that thought he was completely human and there was no
Well, that I
spirit.
do, and
Yeah.
completely divine, but still.
But there was,
didn't
and some
exist or
people
not.
thought there was nothing at all physical about him, that it was all spirit.
Mm.
And he just looked like he ate and he looked like he hurt, but he didn't. I mean, it ran the entire gamut.
yeah. Yeah, so. It almost seems like to me as diverse as Christian believers are nowadays, and a lot of practices and beliefs and stuff. There wasn't any standardization, you know, at that time.
Think about that from our perspective now and go 100 years out where we are. And we have CGI now that can make it look like it's not even a real person.
Yeah.
They live, they ate, they drank. Just kind of flashed in my mind that they didn't have all that, but we do.
Right,
And who's gonna believe what in 100 years?
right, right. Yeah. So plus we've all grown up with movies about Jesus. I can remember watching King of Kings at the drive-in.
Well, and so,
Actual footage.
well, and
Yeah.
even in books though, so much of our history is fabricated.
Uh-huh,
You know, and you learn later, you know, you might get tips of, well, here's what really happened, you
yeah,
know.
yep. Okay, who would like to read verses 4-6? Okay. Then folks on
This
Zoom,
is-
if you want to read it, take a turn reading too, that'd be great.
Want to read that?
This is from the
This is
good.
NIV.
Okay.
Yeah, good news is fine.
Good news is from.
Good news is fine.
4-1.
4-6.
Says truth and love above this. How happy I was to find that some of your children live in the truth, just as the Father commanded us. And so I ask you, dear lady, let us all love one another. This is no new command I am writing to you. It is the command which we have had from the beginning. This love I speak of means that we must live in obedience to God's command. The command, as you have all heard from the beginning, is that you must all live in love.
Okay. Does this sound similar to what we've read in 1 John? You know, the affirmations about love. Knowing what the commandment is. You know, that reminder that this is what it's about.
In NIV, it uses walking
Yes,
a lot, walking in the truth and
yeah,
walk in love,
NRSV does.
walk in obedience.
I do a lot of walking over here too.
All right, and you probably noticed, because I noticed a real difference in my translation from the way yours was organized, some of the phrases and stuff are
Yeah,
organized.
that happened in that first part.
Yeah. And so just to go back to the original Greek was written in all capitals with no spacing between words, and there was no punctuation and no paragraphs.
Quite a long run-on sentence.
So yeah, because when you go into this not knowing, I can remember my second year of Greek, and we were given a copy of the transcript and told to figure it out. And there weren't many of us that got by without cheating, you know, and say what the words are. You have to break it down into words
Yeah.
yourself. So anyhow, so it's a challenge. Yeah, that's how they wrote Greek in those days.
There you go.
It's all Greek to me.
That's what's, probably where that came from.
And the letters are not that different, so that I could read modern day Greek to some extent. So, yeah, the letters haven't changed all that much, but, okay. All right, and then the last verse is 7-13. Somebody like to read
I
that?
got that.
Okay, Sarah?
Many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. Any such person is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Be on your guard. so that you do not lose what we have worked for, but may receive a full reward. Everyone who does not abide in the teaching of Christ, but goes beyond it, does not have God. Whoever abides in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. Do not receive into the house or welcome anyone who comes to you and does not bring this teaching. For to welcome is to participate in the evil deeds of such a person. Although I have much to write to you, I would rather not use the paper and ink. Instead, I hope to come to you and talk with you face to face, so that our joy may be complete. The children of your elect sister send you their greetings.
Okay. So what's the key piece that you hear in these verses?
Anybody that doesn't agree with us is evil, kick them out.
Yeah, don't
Very
listen.
emphatic, very emphatic.
Where's the love in that?
Yeah, that, I mean, when I was reading it earlier, that was what I thought. I was like, isn't this an opportunity to convert somebody? It's just sort
Well,
of-
in verse 7, in my translation says, I say this because many deceivers who do not wish to acknowledge Jesus as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. So it's like these people are coming out to you to tell you lies, so you will no longer be walking in the truth. Okay, so those are the people you don't accept if they come and tell you things that are against the truth that you know.
misinformation.
It's evidently a problem
Yeah,
Mhm.
for the church at that time.
and I'm hearing my mother's voice saying birds of a feather flock together. So, if you run with the wrong people, you end up in the wrong place.
If you
I
lie
think
with the
from
Yeah,
From a
lie with others.
developmental point of view, the church was very young and I don't think had the strength to allow or permit much diversity of thought. It was almost a
Agreed.
survival thing at that point, I think.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I forgot to take off my 21st century glasses.
All right, but let's bring this to the 21st century. What does this bring to us today? What does this mean for us today to read this?
Well, I think they're trying to emphasize the central tenet of Christianity, which is that, Christ is divine, but he was here in the flesh as one of us, as a human. And, arguably, if you don't believe that, I don't know that I'd go so far as to say you're an antichrist, but you probably couldn't call yourself a Christian if you don't believe that. So I do think even today in the 21st century, we have to ask ourselves, do we believe in Christ's humanity and his divinity? And hopefully as Christians, the answer would be yes.
And what about the teaching of Christ? Because that phrase is in this passage 3 times. The teachings of Christ.
Well, that we are to live in love.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there's also a bigger question of where do we draw the line in terms of accepting other people's slight deviations on Christianity as opposed to going off the deep end. For example, you have civic groups, government boards that because they have opened their meetings with a Christian prayer in the past for hundreds of years, they are now confronted with Wiccans and Satanists who think, well, we want to open your meeting with our prayer. So where is the line drawn? I mean, we're not talking between Baptists and Methodists, but you're talking about people who are not even in that family of Christianity.
It's a tough question.
Well, I'm not so sure it's so tough. I mean, Christ told us he is the way, and he, told the disciples to dust their feet off if they're not accepted. I mean, I see it pretty black and white myself, but as if you're in the Christian tenet, I just see it pretty black and white, Christ is or Christ isn't. And we can stand up for what we believe as Christians, or we can sit back. Remember, he said he was going to spew the lukewarm from his mouth. And people will call, Savior, Savior. He'll say, I don't know you. He also said, beware of all these false prophets. And you guys know I have before said, Muhammad is a false prophet. He has misled millions of people. Now, that being said, I think we try to love everybody and convert everybody. But certainly we don't have to accept all the philosophies and tenets of everybody and not and think that's okay, because as Christians, I think we're called to do more than that.
And you know what, Harold, I knew when I asked that question, if you were on the video call, I knew I was going to hear from you.
Sorry.
No, absolutely not.
I think, I said it's a tough question because our country was founded on the principle of freedom of religion. And we have all chosen to be Christians and have been raised in Christian traditions. So how do you balance that out with freedom of religion? So I'm not advocating for the Wiccans or the Satanists or whatever. I'm not advocating for that.
But as Christians, we believe that everyone's a child of God.
Right.
And that we believe in Christ, other people might not, then we can only you can only show them how Christians behave by how you behave among the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't go out and just because they aren't Christian that we have a right to not allow them the same rights that we have in the government, or that we don't allow them the right to live, and we go out and murder them all to get rid of all the Jews and all the Muslims and all that. That's not Christian.
Right. So I think you're right, Harold. We are called to love them.
We're called to love, but that doesn't mean that they're following Christ, and that's God's choice. I mean, that's God's decision in the end, the judgment or whatever of what it is. But as a country, we're freedom of religion. That's why we left, is so we could worship the way we wanted to worship in many cases.
Yeah.
Or just live.
Yeah.
Actually, the Constitution does not guarantee freedom of religion. It basically says that the government will not establish a religion.
And it does not establish a separation of church and state.
Correct.
Isn't the First Amendment though?
No,
Religious freedom?
read it. It's not in there. Now you can interpret, the almanac as anything you want, but the Constitution is also pretty black and white. It's not there. Now people have stretched and, created and interpreted it to create all kinds of things. It's not there. The whole concept of church and state separation came from Thomas Jefferson in a personal letter to a lady who wrote him and said, please, in this new government, do not create a state church. And he wrote back and said, we won't. We will not create the state, and the church will be kept, we as a country, as a government, will not create a church, government church as England had done. And that's the whole nucleus of the idea of separation of church and state. But I have looked in the Constitution. I can't find anything that says separation of church and state.
Yeah, you're correct. You do have a right to do your own religion, but there is nothing about separation of church and state in the Constitution at all.
But if there isn't, the absence of does not imply the opposite. It does not imply then that church and state are bound together, just as it doesn't imply that they're not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
There is there's something called the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. It's a statement about both freedom of conscience and the principle of separation of church and state. It was written by Thomas Jefferson and passed by the Virginia General Assembly on January 16, 1786, and is the forerunner of the First Amendment protections for religious freedom. That's where all that separation of church and state came
Right.
from. And it's actually, if I remember correctly, it is what Jefferson most wanted to be remembered for, and I believe it's on his grave marker.
Okay, well, here's,
okay.
Sarah has something she wants to say. Hold on, please.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Okay,
I
so,
was right about the First Amendment, religious freedom.
all right, so, all right, so I'm gonna focus this.
On
Saying this,
John
I think
3.
these are all good points, but how are you as a Christian to live your life that supports the teachings of Christ? All right, and so that's a question for contemplation, because I do want to get 3rd John. All right, anything else anybody wants to add about 2nd John?
No.
Okay, all right, so there are 3, moving to 3rd John, all right. There are 3 individuals named in this book, okay, in this letter, sorry. The first is, I'm pronouncing it Gaius, all right, who, get my brain organized here for a second. So he addresses it to Gaius, my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in truth, we're still in truth, all right. The second person is Diotrephes, all right, and there are concerns about Diotrephes expressed in this letter. And then the third person mentioned is Demetrius, okay, and the gladiators. So, and Demetrius is spoken of in positive terms. So as we go through this, you know, to pay attention and see what it is about Diotrephes that are the concerns, okay? You know, I know, you know, I've heard of people named Demetrius, but I just realized I've never heard of, you know, people being named for people in the Bible. I've never heard anybody named Diotrephes.
Yeah, it's a new name for me too.
Yeah, it's a new name, all right? Okay, so if somebody would read verses 1 through 4.
I can do that. The
Right, go,
elder,
Cassie.
the elder to my dearest friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy to have some brothers come and tell about your faithfulness to the truth and how you continue to walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth.
The truth, all right? We're emphasizing the truth. Okay, verses 5 through 8.
I do.
All right, Bud?
My dear friend, you are so faithful in the work you do for your fellow Christians, even when they are strangers. They have spoken to the church here about your love. Please help them to continue their trip in a way that will please God, for they set out on their trip in the service of Christ without accepting any help from unbelievers. We Christians then must help these people so that we may share in their work for the truth.
Okay, so remember from, I guess in Acts as well as Paul's letters, there are references to, you know, the missionaries coming through and supporting them by giving them a place to stay, by, collecting money to help them with their travels. All right, so it's a similar kind of process that this author of 3rd John is referring to. Any questions about this part?
Well, I found it interesting that my translation, you said unbelievers in yours. Mine actually says pagans, and to me, those are different things.
Does anybody's translation say Gentiles,
Mine says pagans.
pagans? Mine says non-believers. Yeah.
Just found that
As
in-
non-believers.
Okay,
I mean, because you could be Jewish and be a non-believer,
yeah,
It doesn't
you
make
wouldn't
you-
look at them as pagans.
right,
So I found that a very
yeah,
interesting translation.
yeah. Because apparently in some of the translations, Gentile is used. Okay, then these next verses, 9 through 11, mine headlines this or captions it, beware of the example of Diotrephes. Okay, so if somebody read 9 through 11.
I got it.
Okay, Sarah?
I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. So if I come, I will call attention to what he is doing and spreading false charges against us. And not content with those charges, he refuses to welcome the friends and even prevents those who want to do so and expels them from the church.
11.
Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but imitate what is good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil has not seen God.
All right. So what's Diotrephes doing?
Telling the wrong stuff. And more importantly, to me though, is preventing people who want to share the word from doing so.
Well, it looks to me more like I don't know, this is gonna sound bad, but it really reads to me more like, we disagree. So have nothing to do with him. It's, like, there's some big argument between the two.
Yeah, there's.
Okay.
Mine says, I will call attention to what he is doing, spreading malicious nonsense.
Right, mine
About
says
us.
wicked accusations.
Yeah, and I wonder what that is,
Right,
Yeah.
And we do not know.
we do not
Right.
know. Right. Mine also says that he enjoys being in charge.
Yeah.
Of it.
Mhm.
So the charges against Diotrephes, he loved being in charge. He didn't accept the elder and his friends. He spread false charges against the elder and his friends. He does not give hospitality to the delegates of the elder, and he ousts those who do. Seem not to be doctrinal. Is what kind of important saying.
Well, it's like two people who are trying to be the leader.
Yeah, and if we don't know if Diotrephes is one of these that's saying that Jesus didn't come in the flesh.
Right, we don't know what he was.
We don't know. But apparently there is
Some beef.
some major beef.
Yes.
All right. All right, so in verse 11, the author of 3rd John gives, the admonition to never follow a bad example. Keep on the good one. Whoever does what is right is from God, and we heard that wording in 1st John also. All right. But no one who does what is wrong has ever seen God. So that verse has some similar wording as in 1st John. So, all right, so verse 12 is a commendation or condemning of Demetrius. I'm sorry.
That's what it said.
No.
No. Sorry,
I
my
say
brain.
Demetrius.
Yeah, so Demetrius, verse 12. Demetrius has been approved by everyone, and indeed by truth, capitalized, itself. We too will vouch for him, and you know that our testimony is true. All right, so Demetrius is a good guy. So in contrasting Diotrephes and Demetrius, this writer is using familiar familiar language that we've seen in the John books, all the John books, about not seeing God and being of God. So those important key pieces. All right. Anything anybody wants to add about Diotrephes and Demetrius?
There was one comment. Once you've seen God, you could never do wrong. I think that kind of rubbed me the wrong way in terms of the frailty of humanity. You know, because I think there are people who are genuine Christians who occasionally their behavior doesn't reflect that, but then they, you know, kind of check themselves and get themselves back on track.
Yeah, we, because there was a lot of that language in, 1 John.
Yeah.
And so it is, but sort of going, in my mind, it goes back to what you're saying earlier, Nancy, that developmentally for the church, for the early church, you know, that need to have really clear expectations
Yeah.
and really clear structure, so to speak. So,
I'm a little bothered by the whole us and them idea.
yeah,
And I live in what I perceive to be the real world. And the real world is and always has been a mess. And a lot of division. And a lot of, it's either my way or the highway. And how do we ever come together? And I know my brain is going over into political events and all the crap that's around us all the time, but if we live our faith, we have to live through all that stuff.
yeah,
And so I'm not making any claims about anybody or anything. I'm just confused about how to walk my path and maybe help somebody else see things that I think are a little better way to do
yeah, that it is confusing at times. There are also times when, you know, the light bulb comes on and we know real clearly what we need to do. You know, and to settle ourselves back into sometimes, I know for myself, I have to settle myself back into what's the right thing. So, I want to wrap us up because it's, so we can get to worship. So the last 3 verses. There are several things I had to tell you, but I would rather not trust them to pen and ink. So having that face to face or mouth to mouth conversation, as the commentator puts, that would be translated literally. However, I hope to see you soon and talk to you in person. You know, Paul would say that in a lot of his letters. Peace be with you. Greetings from your friends. Greet each of our friends by name. Amen.
That's an interesting thing there about the importance of this face-to-face interaction, and we wrestle with that, you know, even in our own lifetimes, in our own context, you know, online learning, that's always a debate, you know.
Yeah.
And whether we're here by Twitter, by Zoom and all these things, but that's kind of historically, it seems that there's an important point where I can't be sure you understand what I'm saying when I write it down.
Yeah.
Or do something. I have to read your body language or whatever
Right, yeah.
else is
Right.
involved. You know?
Right.
Well, it's hard enough to communicate face to face and still come out.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
With the same understanding between people.
True, true.
But we feel face to face with you guys.
Yes, yes, we do.
Except Harold, I can't see his face.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Next
An enigma.
count your blessings.
Okay,
Next week
there you
is
go.
Jude. And
Jude,
you know,
oh, that's short.
age, you know, all of us Beatle fans or whatever. So blessings to all of you
It
this
was really
week.
about Julia, you know that.
Oh, yeah,
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 okay.
yeah. It's really about Julian, but we only learned that in recent years. I hope all of you have a good week and count your blessings today.